Ecclesiastes says, good. It's good that you feel frustrated. It's good that you don't embrace the idea that we should all die. And so the frustration and the fear can actually serve a purpose, which is to know that this isn't really how it's supposed to be. And what's more, there is something better. There is something more.
Hey friends, and welcome back to the channel. We turn on the news and social media and we see some pretty horrible stuff. War, homelessness, drug epidemics, cancer rates, kidnapping, violence in our streets. Here in Israel, we see missiles fired indiscriminately into civilian populations. We see the perversion of our youth and even a new generation faced with the inability to communicate because of the addiction to social media. Now, when observing these things, we can often feel like there's no hope and that life is just meaningless. Even those who are financially well off and are enjoying living for the things of the world can often come to a place where they ask, is this all there is? While knowing that the same fate that is awaiting the homeless man or woman on the streets awaits them as well. Where do we find our hope and what do we put our trust in? Today, our guest Ruth Rosen, writer and author with a degree in biblical studies from Biola College, will be talking about the seemingly meaninglessness of life and where we can truly find a hope, meaning, and purpose that lasts, regardless of our circumstances. Sound too good to be true? Well, let's get into it and find out. Hey, Ruth, I'm really enjoying this conversation. Thank you so much again for being here.
Thanks, Jeff. It's great to be with you.
Yeah, if you haven't seen Ruth's other videos, go check them out. They're here on the channel. When we were speaking in preparation for this video, Ruth, the conversation, for this conversation, you were telling me how much you love talking about the book Ecclesiastes. So tell us, why do you love this book so much? And what is it you'd like to share about it?
I got to go back to my Bible school days. It's really funny because the first I really noticed Ecclesiastes was at a secular college, and we studied it in wisdom literature, and I loved it then. And then I went to Biola, which, don't get me wrong, now Biola University, it's a great school, and I don't want to pick at it, but the professor who taught this said, I don't really know why this is in the Bible. So really? I think that Bible believers don't always appreciate the book of Ecclesiastes so much. And it's just has always meant a lot to me. Number one, whether you believe that King Solomon wrote it as I do, or just some very wise person, mm-hmm. It's so comforting to me to know that somebody who was much smarter than I am had a lot of the same struggles that I do, and a lot of questions that I have, and I think that, whether you're a believer or a seeker, it's good to keep asking questions. God's not, there's certain things that God wants us to know 100%, and He makes those things very clear. But there's other things that it's good and right and fine to question and to struggle with. In fact, it can bring us closer to Him, and so the book of Ecclesiastes does that. It makes it okay to express frustration at the way that things are in the mm-hmm. world. Right. It kind of, in a much more poetic way than I'm capable of, sort of vents some of the frustrations of life with there's patterns that are pleasurable and there's patterns that are painful, and the book of Ecclesiastes, talks about both of those patterns, but more than anything, it talks about where is the meaning in life. And I think a lot of people, have that struggle for meaning, particularly in light of the fact that, all of us, have an expiration date. Mm-hmm. None of us are going to be walking around on this earth forever. And so I think for a lot of people, the thought of death just seems to suck all the meaning out of life. Mm. And here's a book that deals with that in a very raw way, is relevant for any generation. I don't care how old or young you are, or it's just so relevant.
Yeah.
But then my favorite verse in the whole, which I actually a couple of years ago I got my first tattoo, and my only tattoo because I don't know I can afford the other ones that I want. But so the tattoo is it's basically, the theme is Ecclesiastes 3:11, which is, He has made everything beautiful in its own time. Also, He has put eternity in their hearts, except no one can know what God is doing from beginning to end. Well, that's my translation anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so when life is frustrating, when the fear of death looms,
Mm-hmm.
Ecclesiastes says, good. It's good that you feel frustrated. It's good that you don't embrace the idea that we should all die. And so the frustration and the fear can actually serve a purpose, which is to know that this isn't really how it's supposed to be. And what's more, there is something better. There is something more. And while I wouldn't say that Ecclesiastes, wraps up everything and puts a bright, shiny bow on it, we do have the contrast of life under the sun, and then those verses that talk about God.
Mm-hmm.
And then, especially to me, the heart of the whole book is that He has put eternity in our hearts. And so when we're not satisfied, it's because God has designed us for a longing that only He can satisfy, and that everything under the sun, as it were, everything, that we might see as being in our jurisdiction, has an end, and that no matter how wealthy you are, no matter how many pleasures you're able to amass, there's still going to be this frustration. But frustration and fear are what guide us to something better.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of people say, why do so many people, when they reach the depths of hell, when they're depressed and anxious, why only then do they find Jesus? And I think the book of Ecclesiastes is a great indication that it's not always like that. There are many people that have everything that they've ever wanted, and they come to a place where they say, is this all there is? I thought I was going to be satisfied, but I'm not. It's like chasing after the wind. And I know that the Hebrew word for what they say is vanity, they use is hevel, which actually translates into steam or vapor. You can try to grab it, but as soon as you do, it slips through your hands. And I think the life that people lead is they're continuously trying to grab and hold on to things, and they may seem like they're holding on to it for a while, but eventually it will slip from between their fingers and vanish. I think it says or something along the lines, the mountains and the oceans and everything. These were all here well before we were, and they're going to be here well after we are. We're just here for a very small period of time. And, the book of Ecclesiastes, to your point, talks about what we can really hold on to. And like you said also that, God, I think this was in your testimony, if I'm not mistaken, you're the only one that loves me that will never die. Wow. That was a huge, huge statement. And that hit my heart. And it's true. Everything that we have is going to pass. And so what can we really put our faith and our hope in but God Himself?
Yeah. And it's, when I say that it's irrelevant, it's a relevant, not irrelevant. It's a relevant book, for all ages. I think that in a sense, it's built into us. It's why dystopian stories, seem to be more popular than utopian stories.
Yeah.
I'm a Star Trek nerd, and I mean, if you look at the earliest, Jim Kirk, William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, Spock, and that, and then you look at, the most recent with Picard, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
The early Star Trek was they're going to other, planets, and they're bringing with them the philosophy that we've gotten past all bigotry and hatred, and medical science, has wiped out hunger, sickness, and all of these things. And now we've got nothing better to do than go explore people and let them find their own way to this ultimate happiness, that we're experiencing. And I mean, I suppose part of it might be that, every good story needs conflict, but, their conflict was always, with the other planets, where things, where they hadn't gotten so evolved.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting in the Picard series is that it's still this, very futuristic thing. And there's, medical science is so great, and there's this and there's that, and there's not, all of these wars anymore. But there's all of this inner intrigue in high, places, and people are still, subject to, bigotry and all of these things that are, really in the human heart.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Okay.
No.
Sorry about that.
No. It's good. No, one of my best friends, he loves the Star Wars. So, we all love,
It's totally different than Star Trek.
No, of course it is. Right. Said by a Trekkie, true and true. Ruth, thank you. And let's encourage everyone to read the book of Ecclesiastes. And if you feel that life is meaningless, if you are struggling with loss, unfortunately, it is a part of our life, but we can continuously, like you said before, grab onto the one that never dies and the one that will always love us. So thank you, Ruth, for sharing that.
Thanks, John.
To find out more about Ruth and her work, click on the link below in the description and stay tuned for our next episode, where Ruth and I will be discussing why Jewish people have such a negative response to Jesus and how that has been changing over time. To find out more about Jews for Jesus, you can visit us and even chat with us anonymously at our website, jewsforjesus.org. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And may you all find peace, love, and hope in our Messiah, Yeshua.